Contact 5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Azama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of choice broadcasting say thanks.
Of course, you already know that out there, don't you, tailgaters? But every once in a while, I think I have to talk to new tailgaters because I suspect that people good word about tall tales, or even better, if you know liberals out there that don't know about it, send them to Tall Tales because they really need some learning. Okay, first item on the elections in Guam have an exciting effect on our community, as divisive campaigns can become with factions, families, and they know.
They know. They're not sure.
Yeah. Let me just try one thing more here. Leaders of process many on Guam take seriously, and maintaining the integrity of that process while navigating its rules, deadlines, election cycle guarded by volumes of rules, regs, and laws. There remains an agency and its team of movers and shakers, party bosses.
That's the biggest irony about the Election Commission.
It is, yeah. So no, it's sites with different dates. Guiding the electorate through the painstaking process of elections is nothing short of a sacred. It's not sacred. Well, we use that word. If we really, we had for lunch, for dinner. So, as far as the editorial is concerned, they got one thing right, and that is Maria Pangilinan, star of any election commissioner we've ever had. She's able to keep the machine running smoothly now. Of course, Jose. Very bit. The title of it is called Third World Electorate. Now, we overuse Jigo could look like something other than a back road to a dump in a third world country, which is what it looks like. The third world was the so-called non-aligned world. India being premier among word that Donald Trump used to describe them. I'll use a euphemism, shucks hole country, Alabama. It says, welcome to Alabama. At least we're not Mississippi. Was born in Texas, and her pa's from Arkansas. She's my Texarkana baby. In one building. You have the United States District Court for the Eastern District. So enough of this third world stuff, Jose. Going out and interviewing everybody. And on the front page of, I think it was the Post, the third world, oh, wait a minute, hold on a second. I got to go to systemic racism. Don't tell me what color my red shirt is. Okay, systemic racism. You remember this. Paul Zerzan wrote, transgender youth clinic had increased 4,000% in a decade. Her journalistic curiosity was sparked. Journalistic curiosity. It's almost a contradiction in terms on our island. It's an oxymoron. And more so when she could find no mention of this in the mainstream press. She began asking the obvious questions. Why the surge? What treatment does the clinic offer? What evidence is there to support of body-altering drugs and surgeries? What are the risks? What follow-ups have been done? Turner and her colleagues uncovered an ant's nest. Of course, all the ants wanted to be butterflies, right? No?
Which story is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, men wanting to be women.
Oh,
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so this entomologist was figuring out how to graft butterfly wings onto the backs of ants. Yeah. More questions followed. Why the censorship? Why the secrecy? In answering these questions, the Times of London's reporters shared testimony from clinician whistleblowers. They revealed how the clinic was rushing vulnerable patients through experimental treatment, and they investigated the role of pressure groups in directing government policy. They also shed light on independent reports warning that female prisoners were being put at risk by policies favoring men identifying as women, and they interviewed detransitioners, those who identified as trans but changed their mind, about how they were failed by clinicians. Now, there are links to all of these subjects here, and they're all right on point. One editorial, the official viewpoint of the newspaper, read, quote, the immutability of biology and genetics must be recognized. So those born with male chromosomes cannot compete in women's sports where male strength, size, and body shape give an unfair advantage. This actually appeared in a newspaper. Can you imagine that? Another about the Tavistock Gender Clinic for Youth read, worries about the Tavistock abuse, Tavistock's obtuse ideology have long been highlighted by writers for the Times. At last, the health service has listened. Okay, let's take a break here, Jose, and I'll come back to more systemic racism.
Choice Broadcasting has done it again.
Votes are in and we hit the trifecta.
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Azama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting say thanks for all your votes and support.
If you're an advertiser, find out what our best can do for you and your business.
Call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages.
And let us get your message out to Pika's best listeners with Pika's best broadcasters.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are back again to systemic racism. So we're talking about the way the Times of London handled this whole transgender phenomenon. And then I pick up with this. Another about the Tavistock Gender Clinic for Youth, right? Worries about Tavistock's obtuse ideology have long been highlighted by writers for the Time. At last, the health service has listened. They were fearless, meticulous, and persistent in their coverage. And what they printed really did make all the difference. 4 years ago, someone read both the Times of London and the New York Times would be forgiven for thinking that transgender ideology was exclusively British problem. when really what it was and is happening in the United States is far worse and on a far bigger scale. The trouble is that most journalists are either incurious. Now, there's a word, incurious. We got to add that to our vocabulary. Make it part of Jemmy Ekotny, probably, huh? Incurious. Are either incurious or credulous on the subject. Nevertheless, the sustained publicity of these issues in Europe is starting to force a reaction in the United States. A recent New York Times piece titled, quote, "They paused puberty, but is there a cost?" states that concerns are growing among some medical professionals about the consequences of the puberty-blocking drugs, a New York Times examination has found. Moreover, the authors write, there is emerging evidence of potential harm from using blockers, according to reviews of scientific papers and interviews with more than 50 doctors and academic experts around the world. Some children on puberty blockers have experienced a deficit in skeletal mass. One doctor quoted, others have developed osteoporosis. And yet, even the possibility of ill effects was not mentioned in a 2018 New York Times piece by Perry Class, in which puberty blockers were referred to as a, quote, pause button, which gives families time for counseling and a chance to be sure of the child's wishes. And in a 2021 story titled, What Are Puberty Blockers? The Times' Lena Wilson claimed that the significant benefits of puberty blockers included a reduction in suicidal tendencies and a reduced need for expensive gender-affirming operations as adults, without citing any supporting evidence. Yet Wilson did include a caveat. While puberty blockers are commonly referred to as fully reversible, more research is needed to fully understand the impact they may have on certain patients' fertility. There is also little known about the drug's lasting effects on brain development and bone mineral density. Note that Wilson wrote that lasting effects on brain development, bone mineral density, and fertility are not fully understood. But we're going to keep doing it anyhow.
Because the kid wants it.
Yeah, if the kid wants it, yeah. Jimmy, you're 12 years old now. Do you want to continue to be Jimmy, or would you rather be Jamie or Jenny? In January, the New York Times published a lengthy piece headlined, Doctors Debate Whether Trans Teens Need Therapy Before Hormones. But as anyone following this issue is doubtless aware, doctors have been debating these issues for years. Why is the New York Times so late to the discussion? Any competent journalist ask any of the basic questions that arise around the issue of transgenderism, especially as it applies to pediatric medicine, would soon realize that what is happening is an experiment, one in which the participants are not only misled, but also incapable of consent. Yeah, now, I will be lucky if there aren't people out there saying that guy Klitzkie needs to be canceled. He's transphobic. He's a bigot. Yeah, because he doesn't go along with the transgender narrative. So if you don't go along, if you do something silly like bring facts to the table, you could be in a heap of trouble. Okay, we move on next to the world electorate. This is by a guy named Matthew Boose. I'm going to call him Matthew Booze. Yeah. And I just heard Jose mumble under his breath, I'll drink to that. Candidate quality. How about voter quality? Like the Democrats after 2016, Republicans are bewildered by the results of the midterm elections and are busy searching for a scapegoat. The establishment blames Donald Trump while MAGA blames Mitch McConnell. Others echoing Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables remark are inclined to fault the ignorance of the electorate. This blame the voter narrative may have a taste of sour grapes. We got to ask Robert Underwood about that one. But it makes a good deal of sense. Poll after poll shows that Americans share the pessimism of the Republican base. If voters don't like the way things are heading, why did they reward the people running the show? Nobody wants to say it, but Trump didn't make Pennsylvania vote for a potato any more than Mitch McConnell did. Did Pennsylvania vote for a potato?
Peace. No, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. The truth is, Pennsylvania got what they wanted in John Fetterman. The left's cynical, sentimental approach worked. Voters identified with a victim in a hoodie with a superficial working class image pushing class envy.
Who speaks like the president?
If we're going to discuss candidate quality, Dr. Oz can at least speak coherently, which used to be a requirement for running for office. He should have won easily, and there's no reason to suppose another Republican would have fared better. The problem here is voter quality. The picture we got from Tuesday is that of a decadent, vegetative electorate easily swayed by platitudes and sentimental appeals, fervently attached to its entitlements. Within the living memory of many Americans, abortion was widely illegal and considered a grave evil. It sure as hell, when I first came to Guam, there was a doctor who had his office in a flamingo-colored building next to Bob's Whispering Palms. It was attractive. It was covered with a Cadenia d'Amore vines. It's kind of a neat little place. I won't mention the doctor's name, but even I knew, and why did I care? The guy was an abortionist. And nobody wanted to mention his name in polite company. Nobody wanted to say, well, I'm going to go to my doctor, Dr. X, because abortion wasn't cool. Within living memory of many Americans, abortion was widely illegal and considered a grave evil. Americans now appear to regard it as a treasured right. In Montana, voters even rejected a measure to provide life-saving care to infants born alive after a botched abortion. Did Lou Leon Guerrero go to Montana to campaign for that constitutional amendment?
Probably.
Yeah. Republicans performed well with married men and women, the people who should be at the center of civic life, while Democrats dominated with unmarried women and the twitchy nihilist Generation Z. Again, voter quality. Where did Republican messaging stumble? The party perhaps could have been more affirmative about what they support, but they cannot be blamed for betting that voters would recoil at the ugliness of the alternative. Even the Democrats are surprised by their success. The choice here was pretty stark. You can vote for more crime, child mutilation, toddlers in masks, or you can vote for us. But you have to give up your abortions. There was a rational choice, and the people didn't make it. Those expecting a thundering rebuke of tyrannical COVID restrictions Biden's incompetence, the border crisis, economic mismanagement underestimated the passivity of the people. In the end, people rewarded their abusers. Why wouldn't they? In 2020, a minority of the country was attacked and disparaged for opposing school closures, masking, and lockdowns as the majority fell into a panicked trance. They hung on every word from tyrannical, grandiose experts like Anthony Fauci.
Don't you dare question him.
Some 90% of U.S. adults got conned, some coerced into taking a vaccine that for many likely did more harm than good. The DOP's dejection is understandable. If the party can't score a red wave under these conditions, then when will they ever? Those dispirited by the outcome should take another dose of reality and consider what elections will look like after another 10 or 15 years of mass migration have taken their toll. It's not a pretty picture. Those inclined to say the GOP was not persuasive enough or that Trump's toxicity is the issue are missing the forest for the trees. America is balkanizing elections. It's balkanizing. Its elections are going the way of the third world, as are its people. There's no easy solution to this predicament, but the answer isn't for the GOP to ditch the one man who excites the party base, nor is it to pander to the lowest common denominator in hope of buying more time before the demographic time bomb goes off. If it's any consolation to the party, this election showed us that the country is so deeply divided that the GOP probably couldn't have done much better. About half the country cannot be expected to vote rationally under any circumstances. Republicans should give up any illusion in convincing them and focus on delivering to their base. Good editorial, Jose. A good article.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting about Pennsylvania and voting in Fetterman was a lot, especially the media, kept using a rationalization that Roosevelt had polio and nobody knew about it. Right? It was Roosevelt?
Yeah, and you know why?
But there's a big difference between having polio and suffering a catastrophic stroke.
Absolutely.
And the intellectual dishonesty in trying to make the comparison was stark, except for the people in Pennsylvania.
Exactly. And something about Roosevelt. I of course remember Roosevelt vividly, and I remember seeing pictures of him walking. And I never saw a picture of him in his wheelchair because no one ever did. This was the convention that all of the media had adopted. We're not going to expose Roosevelt as being crippled, as being an invalid. So the way he was able to walk, he had iron braces from hip to ankle that could be locked so that his legs would be rigid. He'd hang on to people on either side of him and swing his legs forward. That's how he was able to walk. And he could only go like maybe 20 feet or so. But because the media didn't expose the fact that he got away with it.
Yeah, there's a big difference between a physical injury and a cognitive injury.
Well, and once again, it shows you what the media is going to show you and what they're not going to show you. And in a way, I suppose from about December 7, 1941 on, I might have agreed with the media because that would have been the last thing we needed during wartime. A historical footnote, if you read David McAuliffe's biography of Harry Truman, how Harry Truman got to be president, they let Harry Truman take out the trash and walk the dog and stuff like that, but he was not anywhere near the inside. He didn't know about the Manhattan Project until after Roosevelt died.
Oh, wow.
And if you read about the the smoke-filled room at the Democrat convention in 1944, the powers that be in the Democrat Party knew that Roosevelt was not going to live long enough to finish his term. But Truman had one real strength that got him to be the vice president. And once again, it wasn't what Truman had, Jose. It wasn't what Truman was. It was what Truman wasn't. And Truman was not Henry Wallace, who was too far to the left for the Democrats, if you can imagine that. Henry Wallace now would be a moderate Democrat, but he was too far so Roosevelt dumped him and picked up Truman. Truman was from Kansas City, Missouri. He was oftentimes referred to by people like Drew Pearson and guys that did the same kind of stuff that I do nowadays as the senator from Pendergast, because of a machine politician named Tom Pendergast, who later on went to the federal pen, was the political power in Kansas City that got Harry Truman elected. And the reason was Truman was the Pendergast machine's token honest man. So, so this guy makes a really good point. And, Republicans now are having this conversation. Is it time to dump the Trump? When he came along, he was exactly what we needed. He was so superior to the alternative. It wasn't even much of a thinking process. But the kind of personality traits that allowed him to be so effective, he didn't care who canceled him or anything. He didn't care what the media thought. And that's why he was able to go forward where no Republican ever had gone boldly before. But now, the conventional wisdom is he's, for every one of the members of his base that he actuates, he's pissing off another Republican.
But I think it goes along with the writer's op-ed about the voting mentality, because we have to be very careful not to lose courage because the leftists or the legacy media told us
exactly
that he's bad for the party. Because I can hear that a lot. People going, yeah, they're telling us he's not saying the things that ought to be said, and I'm saying he never said anything that ought to be said.
Right.
Don't forget that.
Yeah.
He was just as divisive in the primaries in 2016 as he is now. What's the difference?
In fact, during the primary, I got a little bit angry with him because my analysis was there were 16 candidates for the nomination, 15 of whom could have beaten Hillary Clinton with half their brains tied behind their back. But the one guy who got it was the one guy who couldn't beat her. Well, was I wrong, huh? Yeah. So that's what makes politics so interesting. Okay, let's go on to Laura Souter versus Thanksgiving. I guess we need to take a break first, right, Jose?
Yes, sir. 2 minutes.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Yeah, okay, so this is Laura Souter versus Thanksgiving, but I got another article here I need to read to lay the foundation, to show you where Laura is really coming from. And this one comes also from the National Review. And it ran on the 24th of November, and it's called The Radicalism of Thanksgiving. And full disclosure, I have two favorite holidays, Thanksgiving and the 4th of July. The 4th of July for rather obvious reasons. Thanksgiving because, in a sense, it's the only real American holiday. You know, it's something that has roots going all the way back to 1620. It doesn't do anything but commemorate itself. It's not a time to give presents to somebody else or celebrate the nation or mourn soldiers or whatever. So I really like Thanksgiving. And if you want to piss me off, take on one of my favorite holidays. And just like, remember when the Post ran that horrible July 4th holiday year before last?
Yeah.
You know, about what freedom really means, and that was so bad. So here's how it goes. While most Americans in their antiquated parochialism still gather to celebrate Thanksgiving with beloved friends and families, the progressive climate activists over at the Sunrise Movement are considerably more enlightened disposition. They know better. The first Thursday of November isn't a moment to embark on a brisk turkey trot, convene in the living room for football, or eat a couple of belt notches worth of gravy and stuffing. That's not what it is. It's the Indigenous Day of Mourning. And the first letters of those three words are capitalized. It's a proper noun, Indigenous Day of Mourning. Here's what they say. We stand with all Native peoples on this Indigenous Day of Mourning. For centuries, Indigenous people have led the fight for liberation and climate justice. Solidarity forever. Sunrise Movement, November 24, 2022. The push to establish Indigenous Day of Mourning in the place of American Thanksgiving is a piece with broader coordinated cultural project which had begun decades ago in universities, later spilling out into our mainstream institutions and accelerating on the heels of the Black Lives Matter protests of summer 2020. And I've been talking about this repeatedly. It's the same project that has successfully replaced Columbus Day. Poor Scamby. He never forgave him for that. With, quote, Indigenous Peoples Day across the country, with at least 100 American cities and numerous states discarding the Italian explorer for a celebration of indigenous contributions in his stead. The toppling of statues of American heroes, the flying of the Black Lives Matter and LGBT-themed flags from U.S. embassies, inclusive criteria that teach Aztec worship and indigenous chants in place of the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, and the attempt to substitute 1619 for 1776 as the date of the nation's founding are all the fruits of the same effort to turn American identity on its head. And I'm going to skip this next paragraph about the word radical. The American Festival of Gratitude, celebrated as a federal holiday since 1863, was codified by Abraham Lincoln in the midst of a bloody civil war. But that civil war of unequal magnitude and severity, Lincoln reminded his fellow citizens in his presidential proclamation, had not eclipsed the blessings bestowed upon Americans by the ever-watchful providence of God. The horrors of the Civil War, Lincoln understood, were not a repudiation of America as such. They were a reflection. Now, here's the key. The horrors of the Civil War were a reflectionness of the brokenness of human nature, a constant feature of our fallen world from which America was not immune. The nature of man. I guess we got a break for the halftime show, Jose. So right after the whole screen test, we'll come back to this one.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Dramatic rescue in Maryland. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. 2 people were rescued early Monday morning after their small plane crashed into power lines in Montgomery County, Maryland. The plane was suspended close to 100 feet in the air. The pilot and passenger had been trapped for several hours. The crash knocking out power to tens of thousands of Montgomery County residents. Nearly all power has been restored. The investigation into the fatal stabbings of 4 University of Idaho students entering into its 3rd week. Fox's Dan Springer reports from Moscow, Idaho.
Moscow police continue to keep a very tight lid on information, probably actually a good sign that they are still making progress and able to chase down promising leads. If they get to a point where those leads dry up and everything is hitting a dead end, that's when they would release more of what they know in hopes that that will generate the tip that would break the case. The father of Kaylee Gonsalves was on Fox News with Lawrence Jones. He says he hired a private investigator and was told by the police not to release what the PI learned.
Students are being given the option to finish the semester online. A candlelight vigil will be held on November 30th. With Russian forces targeting power supply facilities, parts of Ukraine are struggling with freezing temperatures. Fox's Jeff Paul reporting in Kyiv.
The city continues to sit in the dark despite officials saying that most folks now have their power back and they're trying to simply conserve as much energy as possible. Temperatures are just getting colder and colder throughout the Kyiv region. Several inches of rain fell as the temperatures hovered right around freezing and at sometimes dipping below freezing. Millions right now throughout Ukraine are dealing with not only the lack of basic utilities at times, but it's really starting to feel like winter.
Residents fleeing the liberated city of Kherson due to continued Russian shelling. America is listening to Fox News.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30 plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Human smuggling still a major problem at the U.S. southern border. Fox's Casey Stiegel in Eagle Pass, Texas, with the story.
Pursuits are almost a daily occurrence. Over in the Rio Grande Valley, Texas DPS tried pulling over a vehicle carrying suspected illegal immigrants. The driver hit a stop sign. Everyone bailed from the car. 5 migrants and the smuggler all arrested. Texas DPS thwarting another smuggling incident. This one involved a tractor trailer at a checkpoint. 18 migrants found hidden inside and the driver arrested. It is a vicious cycle and one that is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation.
Meanwhile, Customs and Border Patrol agents experiencing lower morale due to the border crisis. National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd explains on Fox Report with John Scott.
Anytime that we know that we can't do our jobs, we put that uniform on because we want to protect the American people. Right now, we can't do that. So every single time you hear of somebody dying of fentanyl, we feel it. We feel bad because we know we could have stopped it, but this administration just isn't letting us.
A pair of heroic police officers are honored with a hockey tribute in New England.
Bristol, Connecticut police officers Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte and Sergeant Alex Hamsey were both shot and killed in the line of duty in October. On Saturday, the two were remembered in a very special way. First responders from 18 police departments across both Connecticut and Massachusetts played a hockey game in Hartford in honor of their slain brothers in uniform. A pregnant Laura DeMonte, the widow of Dustin, dropped the puck to begin the Wolfpack and Hershey Bears game. It was all organized by Hartford Police Dispatcher Michael Elwood as a means of raising funds for the families of the two. As he put it, we're going to continue to go forward as a family and make sure they're not forgotten.
That's Fox's Karen McHugh. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Choice Broadcasting has done it again.
The votes are in and we hit the trifecta.
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Azama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting say thanks for all your votes and support.
If you're an advertiser, find out what our best can do for you and your business.
Call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages.
And let us get your message out to Pika's best listeners with Pika's best broadcasters.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
Okay, so here we are, second half of Tall Tales. Before I get back into the card, we're going to go to Hollywood. And we're going to tune in on the video that was put together by a potential starlet who you may be seeing on the silver screen someday if you go to horror movies. Let's run it, Jose.
You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization, organization. It's the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest and what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to yell.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw how sigin Jojo Gitano. Titaw-taw-tano how. Waho bini taw-taw-tano. Waho bini magahoda. Waho rasyon na kayo gitsubini. Hago taza rasyon mo bini. Ako sa manila. You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please, sponsors.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not
When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, sponsors. Please leave. No, you can't let them go.
What happened to him?
Oh, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. I'm
We're proud of you, Auntie.
So just Malasi.
So there you have it. The face and voice of the separatist movement on the island. But of course, everything that she said is something that we should all take to heart, because she did identify herself in the key category when she said, I'm an indigenous Chamorro. Now, I wonder if there are any other kind.
Pretty right.
Are there non-indigenous Chamorros?
There are Hapa Chamorros, and that's a Hawaiian term.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay, I got our Carl on the line, right? Or did he hang up? Yeah, he's there. Our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. Tell me about Hope Cristobal, our Carl.
Yeah, it's you know, I called up and I told Jose, this is the first time I've actually seen that video. I've heard it countless times on the radio. I'm more of a radio buff. I'm very low tech. And, I was expecting like maybe 100, 150 protesters backing up Paul Zerzan, and shaking their fists and protest signs, oppressing...
pitchforks, torches.
Yeah, exactly. Oppressing that poor lady, and there's Paul Zerzan. I burst out laughing when she's there, you're a murderer, and Paul Zerzan lifts up his mask and nonchalantly sips some water. That was one of the funniest things I've seen this entire week.
Yeah, the whole Hope Cristobal screen test would be hilarious if it weren't so tragic.
Exactly. Yeah. And, the line that really reveals a lot, or one of them, is the line, you're a white man.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's noticed, but there's one or two other white men on this island that have contributed a whole lot to, paying taxes and running businesses and working hard to advance the island, obeying our laws, voting.
It's clear from what she's saying that the island would be a whole lot better off with none of them here.
Exactly.
Because she's an indigenous Chamorro. She's Tautautanō. meaning she's a person of the land.
Yeah, and you know, I have Chamorro blood, but I take offense at that because my dad was a white man, you know, who came here after the war and helped to...
As part of the systems of colonialism and systemic racism?
Exactly.
Or for a job?
Now I'm kind of confused. I need to go back and rethink history here. Why did he come out here? No, it's for a job. It was to... He was offered a job, and he came out to the island. He never left, and now...
How dare you!
Yeah, he's a permanent part of the island. He's actually basically fertilizing the island, enriching the soil. And I hope to do the same when it's my turn. But that is sad, you know, and the only worth of a person is the color of their skin. You know, you're a white man. It doesn't matter if how hard they've worked, how much tax money they've contributed, all the things they've done, you know, white people that have been here 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years.
Even if they never jaywalked.
Exactly.
Were kind to old ladies and wouldn't even think about tearing the tag off a mattress. Doesn't matter. They're white men.
Yeah, so I can never support something like that. You know, my father, you know, the older I get, the more I love my old man, you know, and I realize how much I owe him. I could never support that. If he was alive, I'd want him to have a voice. And I sure wouldn't want him to be called a murderer just because of the color of his skin. You know, that's terrible.
Yeah, you ought to, you know, put forward some effort before you could be called a murderer. You just can't become a murderer by default.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, Paul Zerzan, he does have that kind of look. You know, he looks like a hardened criminal. You know, right?
Oh yeah.
Right out of the you know, what do they call this?
You know, when he finally walked away, I was listening for his Harley to start up because he sure looks like one of those outlaw bikers, doesn't he?
Yeah, if you take off his shirt, I'm sure he's just covered with tattoos, you know, and you know, a teardrop on his face. You know, teardrop I think is supposed to designate that you killed someone
That's right.
in prison or something. So yeah, he's a hardcore guy.
I hear all his tattoos are orange.
But Hope wouldn't back down. She stood up to him, by gosh.
Yeah.
Him and his mob.
Really, his invisible mob.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Anyway, I just wanted to call in and just share my delight at finally seeing that famous scene on video.
Well, make sure you spread the good word with your friends. That if they haven't seen it, they need to be on board on Mondays.
Oh yeah, I have. As a matter of fact, I just shared a post inviting people, telling them if you're not listening to Tall Tales and Bob Klitzkie, you're missing out. You're really missing out. It's the high point of each day.
You know, our Carl, I could sit here and listen to stories like that all day long. Thanks for calling, our Carl.
Okay, Bob, I'll talk with you later.
That's our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. So going back here to laying the threshold for Souter versus Thanksgiving, this is about Abraham Lincoln. The horrors of the Civil War, Lincoln understood, were not a repudiation of America as such. They were a reflection of the brokenness of human nature, a constant feature of our fallen world from which America was not immune. So the nature of man, you know, man is not noble all by himself. So when we think in terms of the things that didn't go right in our country, yeah, that's, I suppose, tempting, but you got to think about the things that did go right, considering that the United States was made of this, from this same brokenness of human nature, every place else in the world. Every place else in the world thinking that we needed royalty to govern us, that we wouldn't be able to govern ourselves. The violence, bloodshed, and suffering existed here too, was a function of the fact that men were not angels. Americans had built their country from the same crooked timber of humanity. That's a nice phrase. Americans had built their country from the same crooked timber of humanity. But it was the best humanity had mustered in the long, blood-soaked history of the human race. America was capable of becoming what past generations would have considered impossible. It was worthy of pride. It was worth fighting for. Exactly right. Contrast that with the edicts of Thanksgiving's contemporary critics. Today is Thanksgiving Day, and it's also the National Day of Mourning, which remembers the genocide of millions of Native Americans and their ongoing erasure today. Progressive radio host Qasim Rashid intoned, urging his followers to reflect and act to stop the ongoing genocide of America's indigenous people, the ongoing genocide. Simon Moya Smith, a left-wing journalist, maintained that today's National Day of Mourning for indigenous peoples all across this land, also referred to as Unthanksgiving, he added, was the day for natives to celebrate our resiliency and that we are still here. The U.S. tried to kill every indigenous man, woman, and child, but we're still here. Business Insider argued that the National Day of Mourning was a moment for members of the indigenous community to reflect on their heritage and educate the masses about how their ancestors were slaughtered by foreigners who first arrived in the United States in the 1600s.
Wait, I did not know that the United States was formed in the 1600s.
Yeah. Interviewing an indigenous activist, BBC wrote, for her, the day is a painful reminder of an ugly chapter in American history, a symbol of empty promises, a story whose retelling tends to gloss over the undesirable details of, here it is, colonialization. And amid racial reckoning, Axios reported Thanksgiving, where indigenous people are the center of a national myth, is also a target. That much is clear. America's annual giving of thanks is not the only target either. Those who have the common sense to shroud their radicalism in modern terms maintain that these efforts are merely attempts to, quote, live up to Americans' founding ideals rather than to lay waste to the fertile ground that allowed them to flourish. As President Biden argued in last year's presidential proclamation, officially commemorating Indigenous Peoples Day, our country was conceived on a promise of equality and opportunity for all people. A promise that despite the extraordinary promise we've made through the years, we've never fully lived up to. But to the extent to which our octogenarian chief executive understands anything about Americans' conceptions at all, it is little more than a twisted misappropriation of a single line about all men being created equal, abstracted from and twisted beyond anything that the Declaration of Independence signatories would ever recognize. Every other traditional cornerstone of American political tradition, constitutional limits on federal powers, Republican virtue, religious liberty, a respect for the traditional family and communal mores it safeguarded, and the Christian underpinnings of the moral and religious people that John Adams astutely observed our Constitution was made for, goes the way of the dodo. which is pretty appropriate when you're talking about Joe Biden. The true meaning of the Indigenous Day of Mourning, then, is painfully obvious. It's the latest in an onslaught of attempts to replace gratitude with self-hatred, orchestrated via the successful hollowing of the traditions that have made our nation powerful, prosperous, and free. Just as radicalized leveling equity lies to transplant a much more restrained and deferential equality, or a majoritarian democracy demands to take the place of self-governing republicanism, days of mourning seek to take the place of giving thanks. There's nothing to give thanks for. That's what they're saying. That is the counter-revolutionary power of Thanksgiving. It is an expression of a stubborn pride. That's for me, Jose. The expression of a stubborn pride, an attachment to an America that many of the nation's governing institutions would like to leave behind. So long as millions of Americans gather every year to affirm the greatness of our people, our history, and our achievements, the holiday will survive as a stumbling block to all those who, in after time, might seek to turn a free people back into the hateful paths of despotism. Great column. Okay, so that just kind of lays the foundation by telling you what the left, and this, of course, is Frankfurt School, Antonio Gramsci, the long march through the institutions. It's what it's all about. And getting people to distrust the founding fathers, debunk their institutions, tear down the statutes, tell everybody that George Washington was nothing but a bum, on and on and on.
Remain victims.
Yeah, we're still victims. It's all about the oppressed and the oppressors. We are the oppressed. Everybody has a duty who's not oppressed to give us stuff, on and on and on and on and on. So some people think that these are just isolated events, but they're all part of the same pattern. And it all started in 1922, and it's all headed for the same destination: Marxism. Marxism. I'm not talking about Chico, Groucho, and Harpo either. Okay, so having laid that foundation, let's pick up with Laura Sauter's Thanksgiving column. And she says, the fourth Thursday in November designated Thanksgiving Day as an official American holiday. For many in the U.S., it marks the start of a hectic season of family gatherings, traveling, frantic shopping online or at malls. Black Friday madness causes massive congestion as people scurry, spending billions of dollars on best bargains for Christmas, Three Kings, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa gift exchanges. No. The traditional Macy's Day Parade is replete with a symbolism that harkens back to the supposed first Thanksgiving feast shared by the Native American Indians and the Pilgrims. Turkey, taters, squash, corn, all indigenous staples. So that's the first time that she got to her favorite word. All indigenous staples evoke memories of celebrations with family and friends. This holiday certainly has its unique American stamp, replete with cranberry sauce, pumpkin and apple pies, the famous Campbell soup green bean casserole. It's important to note, though, that the Pilgrims didn't invent Thanksgiving. Harvest festivals have existed for thousands of years. And she goes into that. Yeah, this is really important stuff, right?
It misses completely the point of what the holiday is about.
It does. So she talks about Thanksgiving Day in Canada, October 6, 2020. Live and learn. We're reminded that the first official Thanksgiving Day was celebrated in Canada. First Nation peoples had been celebrating the annual fall harvest for hundreds of years before the arrival of European settlers. In 1578, English explorer Sir Martin Frobisher and his crew celebrated their surf passage and arrival in what is now known as Nunavut. The Thanksgiving was held 43 years ahead of the Pilgrim celebration on Plymouth Rock, America's first Thanksgiving. And the point of this is sneak in the word indigenous wherever you can. And she talks about 12 countries today celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm not going to go through the list. And then this is really good. Celebrations mostly evolve from harvest festivals and are held around the same time each year. But then she deviates a little bit, and she says, in the case of Liberia and Norfolk Island, the holiday is not about Thanksgiving for the harvest. It was brought to Liberia by American immigrants, therefore suspect, right? One particular immigrant named Isaac Robinson introduced it to Norfolk Island. Norfolk Island is a small island off the coast of Australia. One particular immigrant named Isaac Robinson introduced it to Norfolk Island as part of his attempt to organize it. So it could be either Norfolk Island or Thanksgiving. The sentence didn't make a whole lot of sense, does it?
Does your type says organize? Because in the paper it says Americanize.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me. To Americanize Thanksgiving or Norfolk Island. Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure he's trying to Americanize Norfolk Island. Meanwhile, Grenadians celebrate the holiday to mark the anniversary of the American-led invasion of the island in 1983, and so on. So let's do whatever we can to take one of the most important days in the American calendar and minimize it as much as we can.
It's like going to somebody's birthday party
and
saying, yeah, it's your birthday today, but you know, Joe Schmo's birthday was yesterday, and
he had a bigger party than
Janet
yours.
Pilar was over here in December, and that's her birthday, so big whoop.
Yeah, so what? So it's your birthday. Okay, now I've laid the foundation to get down to the real meat of what Laura has to tell us. I think we probably need to go to Wrigley Field first, Jose.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
Yeah, I got to do a little bit of historical commentary here. The article I read said that Thanksgiving has been a holiday since 1863, federal holiday. And I read some of Lincoln's proclamation for the first Thanksgiving. Now, Harvey says that FDR created Thanksgiving. Not so, but I'll set him straight. This is what he's thinking of. Thanksgiving is the fourth Thursday in Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, the fourth Thursday in November. And historically, nobody started Christmas shopping until Thanksgiving. The day after Thanksgiving, you started your Christmas. I think nowadays it's moved back to the day after Labor Day, at least for the stores, right? But in I think it was 37, FDR said, you know, that's the time when people go out and spend money Christmas shopping. If Thanksgiving were only a little earlier, there'd be more time and people would spend more money. And this, he thought, was the kind of stimulus that would help during the Depression. So he had Congress change the date from the fourth Thursday in November back to the third Thursday in November as a day to celebrate Thanksgiving. And of course, wags like me back in the 1930s referred to it as Franksgiving. But it didn't last long. People wanted to stick with the tradition. So we did away with Thanksgiving and went back to Franksgiving, maybe 1941. And it's been Thanksgiving ever since. So Harvey, I think you were thinking of Franksgiving rather than Thanksgiving. So I got somebody in the green room here. It's Johnny, Utah. Thanksgiving and world happenings. Johnny, I'm going to go through the Laura Souter part, and then we'll let you wax eloquent about Thanksgiving and world happenings. So here's what Laura tells us. After sort of trying to knock some of the props out from under Thanksgiving, then she tells us, I have learned that understanding the context and historical roots of a tradition we practice is invaluable. Just like exploring the etymology of words, it's important to know the origin of holidays. It's also important to recognize the misgivings that many indigenous people have about celebrating the misbegotten initial encounters between First Peoples and European settlers and the onslaught of genocide and destruction that followed. Those hurts which linger and are unresolved do not disappear at the banquet. Now you see exactly where she's going, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I suspect that they had a first aid kit at the Souter banquet table.
It sounds like Thanksgiving is a day to be ungrateful.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving is the day to once remind yourself that you're marginalized, that you're oppressed, and that you must never forget that your duty is grievance politics, even on Thanksgiving Day. Those hurts which linger and are unresolved do not disappear at the banquet table. They fester in the heart and memory of colonized people the world over. So we've left the Indians and Plymouth Rock, etc., and by Souter's magic carpet, we land in Guam on November 24th, 2022. They fester in the heart and memory of colonized people the world over. She of the festering heart, Laura Souter. As indigenous people ourselves, so I guess I shouldn't be reading this.
Who is she talking about?
As indigenous people ourselves, we must not get swept up in bashing or trivializing the efforts of First Peoples of the American continent as they continue to make sense of being grateful for their survival. I'll read the sentence again. As indigenous people ourselves, we must not get swept up in bashing or trivializing the efforts of First Peoples of the American continent as they continue to make sense of being grateful for their survival.
So never mind her sentence previous?
Where does this come from? I mean, who's bashing whom? Where does this bashing take place? Here in Guam, we are similarly trying to make sense of the atrocities of World War II, scare quote, liberation, close quote, colonization, and the true nature of the relationship between ourselves and the United States. As we round out this weekend of Thanksgiving, it's important to reflect on what we are celebrating. Having gone through 2 years of Wuhan isolation, loss, illness, despair, we truly have much to be thankful for. For Chamorro people, most of whom are believers, the simple phrase we use to express gratitude speaks volumes about how we perceive gratitude. Seju'us ma'asi literally means God be merciful. Now, I got to interject here. What un donkuluna seju'us ma'asi means is certainly lost on me. Dunkulu means big, large. Seju'us ma'asi literally means God be merciful, or God is merciful. How beautiful is that? Reciprocity is at the core of our kinship and social system of relationships as indigenous people and as islanders. Now, is that meant to separate islanders from people who came from the 50 states?
I'm still stuck on that, where these thresholds come from and who defined these.
Yeah.
Are they in our DNA? Is it in the pigment in our skin? Is it just because we said so in an article?
It's because we feel that way.
Because we feel it?
Yeah. Our independence on each other is a fuel that drives us forward and gets us through the hardest times together.
That's every single human on Earth. It's not relegated to a skin color, how much melatonin, pigment you have in your skin or anything else. I don't understand these type of people who write this stuff.
Yeah. Well, she hardly ever writes anything else. So in her last page there, she had the makings of a good column. But of course she ruined it with her constant feel sorry for us. We're indigenous. We're oppressed. We're colonized, on and on and on.
Here's a big secret that a lot of these column writers don't understand. Many people here on Guam, including we Chamorro, understand our relationship with the country we're a part of. It's these kind of people who have contempt, that want to continue to confuse people, to propagandize our relationship, and to think that we're nothing but victims. It's really confounding that they keep getting these pedestals.
Really? Yeah. Good point, Jose. All right, let's head for Churchill Downs, and we'll come back to the media cartel and free speech.
Choice Broadcasting has done it again.
The votes are in, and we hit the trifecta.
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Azama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting say thanks for all your votes and support.
If you're an advertiser, find out what our best can do for you and your business.
Call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages.
And let us get your message out to Pika's best listeners with Pika's best broadcasters.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30 plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Okay, next on the agenda here is Johnny Utah, who wants to tell us about Thanksgiving and world happenings direct from Salt Lake City. Tell us more, Johnny.
Hey, Judge Bob and Jose. Well, race, everybody's making everything about racism. And, race only matters to one group of people. And that's the racist. The rest of us, all we care about is your character. There's no concern for what color you are or anything, or what you do. All that matters is your character. And I think that's the thing that comes out with Thanksgiving is about character. It's about, relationships, not just family, but also friends and integrity and trust and getting together and sharing a meal and having a good time, maybe having a couple of drinks of alcohol or what have you, whatever you want to do to enjoy yourself with your friends and family. And it's all about character, and only the racists are making everything about race. And it's really sad because it's happening, but at the same time it's good because this evil that is upon us is showing itself. It's making itself known right out in the open, right out in public view for everyone to see. We have a lot of things happening in the world today, just in the last couple of days. I don't know if you got a chance to catch the wonderful press secretary of Joe Biden trying to suppress questions to Dr. Fauci, and the uproar that has occurred over that, and the obvious, suppression of speech and the direction of the press, which is what you keep talking about, especially on Guam, where the direction of the press is. I don't know, I'm sure you listened to Ray's show this morning. There is only one news program besides Tall Tales and The Point on Guam, and that's Candid and Troy Torres. That's the only other news on Guam that's real. Everyone else is just a propagandist for the state, for the government of Guam and for the Democratic Party. But here's the thing. They're falling in line. The Democrats are falling in line with the socialist Marxist movement, with this, with everything that they're trying to do, the sexualization of children, the destruction of the church and the family. And the thing is that there is things happening. The Conservative Party in Israel just got put back into power. The same president that was in charge when Trump was president is come tomorrow. He's back in power. He's bringing his people back in. There is a lot of talk in Brazil about a military takeover of the election process there and putting the conservatives, who looks like legitimately won, the conservative president, in power in Brazil. And here's the problem that the Democrats think that they don't have, and that is that they think the truth is on their side, and it's not. It's pretty obvious now that there's a lot of election integrity issues and problems with elections across the board ever since COVID-19 happened and these machines took over the elections. Arizona is a great point right now. There's 4 counties standing up, putting up a fight, almost to the point where it's looking like it might turn into like a little mini civil war or the kindling of a civil war just there in Arizona in those 4 counties that are saying we're not going to endorse this election because it is not true. It's not fair. And the Democrats are claiming, oh, you guys are going to steal the elections, you know, but that's just, they're using the Marxist ideology. They're pointing the finger and saying what you're going to do what we've already done. And it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty obvious. Who's voting for these people? You know, I mean, I'm sorry, but who voted Fetterman into office? I really find that hard to believe. I really do. But evidently it's happened. But the bigger one is Arizona and Nevada. Both of those are looking like those elections are not fair, and that things happen that are not legitimate. And there's a lot of talk of civil war, a lot of talk of desperate actions that are on the horizon. And it's where we're at in this time. And Thanksgiving is gone. They're trying to destroy Thanksgiving, and I don't think we're going to really have Thanksgiving back until we take back the countries, the people get put back in charge, and our politicians go to work for us, not for themselves. That's when we'll have Thanksgiving back.
Well, very interesting, Johnny Utah, as usual. We're so glad that you stayed tuned. What time is it in Salt Lake City right now?
It's going on 1 a.m.
You must have just got off work or something, huh?
I'm on my lunch break.
Your lunch break? Wow.
Yeah, I'm on my lunch break.
So what time do you go to work?
I work a graveyard. I do it 12 hours, 7 to 7.
I see. So you listen to Tall Tales during your lunch hour, and then when you get off...
Correct. Well, I put it on the radio, and I put it on the radio in my workspace. I have a neutral, what do you call it? I don't know. I have an equitable work environment. I'm able to listen to Tall Tales without getting in trouble. How's that sound?
That's great. That's great. And then when you get off in the morning, you listen to Ray's show?
Well, that's when I wake up.
Ah.
That's about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I wake up. Ray's show's on.
Well, I have to commend you to schedule your entire life around these 2 important radio programs.
Well, I get time off as well, and on my time off, I don't listen. I apologize.
Well, we'll let you go this time, but we're glad you called us from time to time, Johnny Utah. Nice talking to you again. That's Johnny Utah. Remember, he's on the Rogues Gallery if you want to know what he looks like. He's the guy in front of the gun.
A lovely collection.
Yeah, a lovely collection of guns. Okay, so I got about 9 minutes to go here. I'm going to just start this. This is a media cartel versus free speech. Once again, I got a foundation that I need to lay. This is something that I talked about quite a while ago. 10 politically correct but factually false words and phrases to stop using immediately. And here's the lead-in. The worst thing one can do with words is to surrender them. George Orwell wrote it in his 1946 essay, Politics and the English Language. Orwell protested not just sloppy use of language, but intentional misuse of language for political purposes. Ancestral landowners, right? Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, he said. Thus, political language has to consist largely of euphemism, question begging, and sheer cloudy vagueness. Once again, question begging. To beg the question means you ask a question which, in order to be answered, must assume the truth of an element in the question. As an example, when did you stop beating your wife? Well, I never started beating well, that's not the question. When did you stop? Or are you still beating your wife? That's begging the question. And that's what the left uses all the time, and that's what Orwell warned us against. Politicians and dishonest media propagandists today use inaccurate language to frame narratives and foster a leftist perspective. Inadvertently, even well-meaning audiences sometimes internalize this language and end up propagating the very ideas and framing they fundamentally reject. Don't let that be you. And that's why, I try to really strive for accuracy of language here on the show. That's why I don't want to hear anybody talking about normalcy. The word is acceptable, it's in the dictionary, but the correct word is normality. And what this article points out that is if you use the word in the wrong sense, not only do you sound like you're using a word in the wrong, but you're modifying your thinking process so that use of the word that's being impressed upon you becomes part of your thinking process. So I expect an awful lot of people on this island think that a person who owned real property prior to it being taken in eminent domain by the United States government still owns that property. Because we talk about ancestral landowners, the owners of the property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why, don't do it. Use the correct word for the things that you're talking about, even though it might be easier to use normalcy instead of normality. So one of the 10 terms is mainstream media. I'll just tell you what the other 9 are. Number 1, mainstream media. Number 2, gender, when you mean sex. Number 3, sex reassignment surgery. Sex is not assigned at birth or ever. It's not assigned. It cannot be reassigned. Surgical procedures that remove or conceal the outward appearance of a woman or a man's reproductive organs are more accurately described as genital mutilation or amputation. Number 4, democracy when you mean republic. Number 5, abortion doctors and abortion clinics. They're not doctors and they're not clinics. Doctors and clinics are interested in health. Abortion is killing. Anti-discrimination policies. That's number 6. 7, undocumented immigrant. Number 8, equity or equality when you mean the other. Number 9, cisgender. Cisgender is an unnecessary word that assumes sex is a result of human choice. Number 10, pro-choice. We don't use pro-choice here. We talk about abortion. People who are pro-abortion, people who are anti-abortion. So I've only got about 4 minutes to go here. I think I better check my green room here. It's our Carl coming back. He wants to make an ending comment. I kind of thought that was my job, but I don't want to tangle with the most dangerous man in the room. So go ahead, our Carl.
Hey, hello again, Bob and Jose and your audience. I just wanted to end on kind of a little bit of a humorous note. I was a regular listener to the Jim Bohannon show, and there was a regular caller, a haole guy named Gil. He was known as Gil from the Philippines. And he called in one time, and he said that I think he was talking to Jim when it happened, before Jim recently passed. And he said his wife, who's Filipina, was getting kind of irritated at him because he was always listening to Jim Bohannon. And so he said, she said, you love Jim Bohannon more than me. And Gil looked at his wife and said, honey, that's not true. I love you both the same.
That's great.
I thought about that when Johnny was talking, because he's like always listening to Tall Tales, and I was imagining, I think his wife is Filipino also, so I was imagining he's getting maybe a little bit of grief now and then.
Yeah.
Right. I just thought I'd end on a little bit of humor. That made me laugh out loud when Gil said that.
That's good, Carl. Colin's wife one time said that she looked, here in Tall Tales, we hate the weekend because no tall tales. But Colin's wife said she really looked forward to them because instead of paying attention to Tall Tales, Colin would pay attention to her.
Yeah, it's the price we pay for being tailgaters.
And it's worth every penny of it, isn't it, Carl?
Absolutely. I'd pay for it. Anytime. All right, Bob.
Good talking to you, Carl. And talking about paying for things, you haven't sent in your entry into the Rogues Gallery. When are you going to buy a T-shirt and put it on Rogues Gallery, Carl?
Actually, today was the first time I've actually seen your Rogues Gallery, and it kind of made me jealous. So I got to start thinking about that. I'm not really a T-shirt kind of guy. I got the noodly arm.
Well, you and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you may see me up there at some point. I'm getting a little bit antsy about that.
Okay, so goodbye, Carl, and let's go, Brendan.
Let's go, Brendan. Talk to you later.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They've been freed from the plane. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. Crews rescued 2 people aboard a small plane that got stuck in live power lines in Gaithersburg, Maryland early Monday morning. Those aboard were trapped in the plane for several hours. Officials said they were hospitalized with serious injuries. The crash caused widespread power outages in Montgomery County. Most of the residents' power has been restored. NFL star Odell Beckham Jr. was taken off an American Airlines plane Sunday morning after a dispute with flight crew. Fox's Nate Foy has the story from New York City.
He's accused of refusing to fasten his seatbelt while drifting in and out of consciousness. Flight attendants worried that he had a medical condition that could possibly get worse during the flight, so they asked him to get off the plane, but he refused. Then, after all the other passengers were forced off the plane because of it, police officers came on. Beckham walked off.
Beckham later tweeted that he had seen everything and called the incident comedy hour. The gunman accused of committing the mass shooting inside a supermarket in Buffalo, New York earlier this year is expected to change his plea Monday. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports.
Peyton Gendron is expected to plead guilty. He's accused of 10 counts of murder, 10 counts of second-degree murder as a hate crime, 3 counts of attempted murder, and a state statute charging him with violating New York's domestic terrorism motivated by hate law. The penalty for the domestic terrorism charge is life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gendron not only live-streamed the attack at the time earlier this year, but his social media footprint revealed his racist ideology. He wrote that he wanted to target East Buffalo due to its large black population.
Protest over strict COVID lockdowns began Friday in China. Demonstrators calling for the nation's leader, Xi Jinping, to step down. America is listening to Fox News.